The Cincinnati Bengals need cap space in 2026. They have a number of ways to get that cap space. And is one of them cutting Orlando Brown Jr.? I don't think so, but let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network in the land. He's James Rapien, I'm Jake Liscow, and we've had you covered here on Locked On Bengals for 10 years. 10 years, your best one-stop shop for daily Cincinnati Bengals coverage anywhere on the internet. And well, we appreciate all the everydayers out there, all of you who make Locked On Bengals your first listen. Today we dive into looking for cap savings if the Bengals are interested in doing so in this offseason. When yesterday we talked about Ian Rappaport's report that they're going to really spend, was the quote from Rappaport, to build this team up around Joe Burrow, and the recent lessons of Super Bowl teams that tell us that, well, you actually do need a defense. It turns out, even if you do score 35 points a game, the Bengals have certainly shown us that to be the case. So if the Bengals need a little bit more cap space to make that happen, well, they consider certain cap cuts this year, and the biggest cap savings they have for any remotely realistic cut would be Orlando Brown Jr. And that's why we start the conversation there before discussing other potential cap cut candidates and why cuts might not be the best way for the Bengals. In fact, aren't the best way for the Bengals to make cap space this offseason. But let's start the conversation with Orlando Brown, who is set to have a $22 million cap hit this year. Cutting him would save just over $14 million in cap space. On the other hand, James, it would create a gaping hole at starting left tackle for this team.
Yeah, and that's it right there. That's it right there. Is you look at left tackle and how hard it is to find a left tackle. And I think about Orlando Brown Jr. and the everydayers know when Orlando Brown Jr. agreed to a deal with the Bengals, well, Jake Liscow was putting on his Wednesday night best. I had just sat on the couch. We had finished recording. Orlando Brown Jr. has agreed to a 4-year deal with the Cincinnati Bengals, $64 million over 4 years. Oh my goodness. I am looking here, and there are so many contracts for left tackles that are $60+ million that are a lot without looking at even the per year or anything like that. My point is that left tackles cost a lot of money, and it's not like he's the top 3 or top 4 paid left tackle. And so when you look at that and you look at where he's at and the money that they would spend on him this year, I don't really see a scenario where you can convince me they're better by cutting Orlando Brown Jr. In fact, and people are going to love this, Jake, so buckle up. Keep on that Wednesday best, even though it's Tuesday as we record this. It's a date reference, everydayers. I would be far more in favor if it's cut or extend, to extend him. If you want to lower that cap hit some and you wanted to extend him and you wanted to kind of cancel that out, then do that. And I'm not saying do that because I get it. There are some questions about his effectiveness, how he's going to age, all of those things. Fine, then don't. But I don't really think there's a realistic scenario where you improve your roster, given all the holes. And there are things on offense that I want to do that doesn't involve left tackle, given all the holes, where you cut Orlando Brown Jr. and get significantly better on offense. And so, yeah, I would keep him. And it's pretty cut and dry for me. I hope it's pretty cut and dry for the Bengals. You're not paying Amarius yet. So it works there. It makes sense there. It lines up well there. I think Orlando Brown Jr. should be here to stay.
Yeah, shout out to Tom Cole, by the way. And I presume everydayer. He says he's an everydayer when he sent the question in. He actually asked this question last week. So as we talk about this today, just wanted to quickly shout out everydayer Tom Cole. Orlando Brown Jr. is the 18th highest paid tackle on an average per year basis in the NFL. That's behind guys like Cole Van Lannon, Alaric Jackson, who's really taken a step for the Rams, by the way. So fair enough. Dan Moore, who you might remember from us talking about how Trey Hendrickson should beat him into the turf when he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A number of tackles that are clearly better than Orlando Brown above him on this list as well. Charles Cross just got an extension, for example. Rashawn Slater at the top of this list. Christian Darrisaw there too. But if they were to cut Orlando Brown, all right, we got $14.2 million more dollars in cap space.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to go spend $14.2 million on a left tackle, and there is not, as far as I know, a left tackle that is better than Orlando Brown available in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
Top of the list for guys who have played left tackle in their career, both Packers. They weren't both playing left tackle this year. Rasheed Walker and Sean Ryan played the most snaps of any free agent to be left tackle in 2025. Charles Cross was another one that would have been on this list, but of course he got extended. Cole Van Lanen also got extended and is now making more than Orlando Brown, as I mentioned. So the answer out there in free agency. And then what? You cut Orlando Brown and now you're suddenly drafting a tackle at 10, or you're starting a second round left tackle and you're doing this thing again where it's like, all right, you need a left tackle. Better draft in the second round. Better start him right away. And who cares if it's good or not? We need it. We need somebody. What do you mean? Of course we have to draft. You put yourself in that position. It's really hard to paint a picture where cutting Orlando Brown makes sense. It's not like there's an heir apparent on the team either.
Sure. No doubt.
Jalen Rivers, is that your best? Like, no disrespect to Jalen Rivers. I don't think he's ready for that. I don't think he'll ever necessarily be ready for that. But I just don't see where you're going if you're like, oh yeah, we can get money here. Let's cut Orlando Brown. I think you got to think past the money on this one.
Yeah, I asked about Amarius and like, would there be any desire to move him? This is a few months ago. And they're like, right tackle is just as important. Like, well, why you feel good about Amarius now and in him holding up and not having to give him help and all of those things. Why move him and mess with the good thing? So I don't think there's any desire there. And the only reason I mentioned that is because you mentioned the heir apparent. And I think some would be like, oh, well, you could move Amarius and find a right tackle. I don't think the Bengals view it that way. I also look at it and you look at his cap hit. And I think that's what people will say. They see the 21 million.
Mm-hmm. That ain't the most important number.
No, it's that cash number, that 14 million.
Yeah.
Yes. If you want some cap space, this is why I mentioned it. And maybe Orlando wants a little more cash. Maybe you could add a year and go the Ted Karras route. If you wanted to give him a little more cash now and lower that to from 21 to 15 million or whatever cap wise, if you wanted to, because you have unlimited cap space in 27, it feels like. So if anything, that's what I mean by an extension. I don't mean a 3-year deal, but if you added one, could it make sense for Orlando? It might. And I think he's happy here. And I don't think he's in a rush to get to free agency. And so there is a scenario where I think that could make some sense. Ultimately, though, like you said, like finding a replacement, it's so hard to do. And there's so many other things they have to do. And he's competent. Like he's a great leader. He was really durable this year after getting nicked up the past couple of years, really durable this year. I don't really see how cutting Orlando makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm with you. The extension.
Would you give him a year? Yeah, that's what
I would wait until the summer to think about that. I'm not doing that proactively to create cap space. I would wait and see, like, how does free agency go? How does the draft go? What's our cap situation look like going forward? What's our cap situation looking like this year? Did we draft a left tackle in the second round who we want to develop and slide in here next year? I would wait.
And they've waited with Ted. They've done those in the summer.
Yeah.
So, because I just kind of think that's the blueprint almost if you're going to.
And it's not just cap space either. It is also cash. Like the Bengals are going to have a cash budget this year. Orlando's making more in cash than he made since he signed that deal. So his deal, very front loaded for cash. It was 34 million nearly in 2023 when the Bengals signed him. In the last couple of years combined, he's made about 16 million. So very front loaded for cash. This is his biggest cash year since 2023. If they were going to do an extension, that would lead to an increase in cash spend on Orlando. That's one of the reasons I would wait. I want to make sure that they've done everything they need to do and spent as much money as they need to spend elsewhere before they talk about giving additional money to a player who's on the team this year anyway. And unless it gets really ugly and Orlando Brown starts a holdout that we don't expect him to do, I would certainly wait on that one. But if you're looking for other bits of additional money for the Bengals, you can look down the roster, try to find cut candidates. And by the way, you mentioned moving Amarius Mims and right tackle being important. Somebody needs to let the Pro Football Hall of Fame know as well. We'll get to that in segment 3 as we look for some other ways for the Bengals to create cap space coming up next.
Jake Liscow laying the hammer down. Look, you know what you need to do? You need to find an employee like Jake, right? You're looking for the right employee, the right fit. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, well, you know how important fit is. And that's why with Indeed sponsored jobs, you're going to find the right fit, the right person that's going to come in and do what you're looking for. And look, if you have struggled in the past, or maybe you think you may struggle to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to hire than non-sponsored jobs. And they boost your post so the people who are the best match for your role can see it and make a real difference. Spend more time interviewing candidates that check all the boxes with less stress, less time, more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of Locked On Bengals get $75 in sponsored job credit to help give you your premium placement that you need for your job at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. That's Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Let them know that Locked On Bengals sent you. Get your $75 sponsored job credit today. Again, Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply.
James, if you're looking for some other cap cut candidates this year, last year it was cut and dried for a lot of these guys. Sam Hubbard wasn't going to be on the team this year in 2025. Alex Kappa wasn't going to return. Jermaine Pratt wasn't going to return, although that cut took forever to come to fruition. Zach Moss looked unlikely to return, although that one also took a while and got weird and left Zach Moss apparently feeling spurned. This year, not as many very clear options, which is why I think people are asking about Orlando Brown. I don't think Tom, when he asked this question, thought they should cut Orlando Brown, and here's the plan to replace him. And I'm sure people out there have plans to replace him. Maybe they have a favorite free agent left tackle, and they think strongly that's what the Bengals should do. And if that's your opinion, we're all entitled to those. But if you look down the roster, the other one I think that people are probably thinking most about is TJ Slaton. And then you can get down to some smaller money ones like the Cody Fords and Oren Burks. And we might see those in the summer. But when you're only talking about $2.9 million, it's not giving you a ton of wiggle room to make those moves super proactively. Like maybe they sign a linebacker and then they make the move on Oren Burks in free agency. Maybe they sign a swing tackle and then they make the move on Cody Ford in free agency. But there aren't a ton of big cap saving measures here. What about the TJ Slaton line item, James?
I think that's the real dilemma. And it's twofold. Do you want to create a hole? And you're going to save significant cap. He's on the last year of his deal. He's not as hard to find as Orlando in left tackle. And he's well paid for what he gives you. And you'd save $6 million in cap space. You'd open that up, boom, right now. And is that worth the $2.5 million cap hit that you would have? Basically, instead of paying him $9 million, you pay him $2.5 million. You have that $2.5 million cap hit. And is that worth it? Can you find an upgrade for $6 million? And is it worth the trade-off, given his familiarity, given all of those things? You could make the argument, yeah, right? I think a lot of people would say, yeah, take that money, put it towards DJ Reader. I'm nervous about doing this, and I would be more comfortable going with the Cody Ford and Oren Burks combo, which saves $5 instead of $6 million. But TJ Slaton, at least you have a proven nose, and we know what it was like, the 2024 Bengals without that proven nose tackle. It's tough. It's tough sledding. And maybe you do end up getting one of these guys. And fine, but is Slaton someone you proactively cut like Alex Kappa? Like, do you know you're replacing him? Like, I don't know that. So I'd be fine waiting it out, seeing what you get. If you can get an upgrade in your eyes, great. If not, then at least you have that spot in there. Last year at this time, I knew Sam Hubbard's replacement was on the roster. I knew Alex Kappa needed to be cut because they needed to upgrade there. We knew those things. This one is a bit different. By the way, last year, I knew Geno Stone needed to be cut and needed to be replaced. They clearly didn't. Sorry, Geno. But like that's it. And maybe they view Slaton differently, but I think at worst case, they view him like a Geno Stone, where maybe you can upgrade, but you don't necessarily need to proactively get rid of him because you might not be able to find a replacement that's better.
I don't know that there's like a pay cut coming for TJ Slaton either, just to
Sure.
continue to draw that comparison. Like he wasn't I know what the PFF grades say. PFF struggles with nose tackles, in my opinion. I don't think that he was as good as DJ Reader, don't get me wrong, but it's a nose tackle. A lot of that job is going to be ugly. Could they get better there? Yeah, absolutely. Could they get better at all of their interior spots? Yeah, absolutely. But like you said, this is one where the Bengals approach to these things, and honestly, we were surprised at how early Kappa got cut last year, if I recall correctly, because their typical way of doing business is, well, let's make sure we have the replacement. And that's why, Sam Hubbard ends up retiring. If they were to cut him early, that would have made sense. To cut Kappa early seemingly as a courtesy to Kappa more than anything, maybe to let him go catch on with another team. Because of the way the Jermaine Pratt thing went and the Zach Moss thing went, I assume that's what it was. I think you would take that delayed approach if you were to make a move with Slaton. You would probably wait until you see how things shake out in free agency, because they're putting their plan together, right? They got plan A, plan B. They have some plans charted out, and they'll start adjusting the plans as players start re-signing with teams later this month in early March, right before free agency opens. We'll have a flurry of activity, a flurry of players re-signing all over the NFL. And maybe we'll see somebody re-sign with the Bengals, Dalton Reiser. I know Bengals fans are waiting.
Please.
But I don't know that the TJ Slaton move needs to happen before free agency, especially because the Bengals, if they need cap space this year, and we're going to do an episode on this, we're going to talk about this.
They have 50 plus million in cap space already, by the way, top 7 in the, like it's not like they don't. And I know you're not saying that. I'm just reminding everyone, like they have a lot of room. They have a good amount.
And the corollary to that, unfortunately, is that for the Bengals, that number is much more real than those numbers you see for other teams in their vicinity. They will behave as if that is their true amount of cap space, and other teams will be like, oh, well, we can change this around, change that around. Well, the Bengals maybe can change something around this year is where I was going, which is Joe Burrow's contract restructure saves them a ton of cap space. If they need that option, and this is something, like I said, that we're gonna dig into in more detail, it can save them up to nearly $20 million in cap space if they need that cap space. It doesn't change anything in terms of when Joe Burrow gets paid. There's next to zero risk because Joe Burrow is a guy that you plan on being around for the entire length of the contract. That's when you restructure contracts, is when that guy's going to be around for the entire length of the contract. And so it pushes some cap expenses into the future. Doesn't change Joe's doesn't change Joe's cash flow. Does change his cap hit. Again, we'll dive into that in greater detail in the future, because they could also do this with T. Higgins. They could also do this with Jamar Chase if they need cap space this year. And they've taken steps to put themselves in a position to do so if they need to. I'm sure they don't want to do this on the bottom line. And again, we'll get into this in more depth in a future episode because it's a bigger conversation. But if they need cap space this offseason, I think it probably makes more sense to look at these restructure options, especially with Joe Burrow, than cap cuts, because it can make more cap space, and then you're not losing the player as well in the process.
Yeah. Joe would love to do this. He would love for them to be like, hey, we're going to add all these pieces and we need to have an extra little bit of cap room here. Joe, he would be like, yep, where do I sign?
He doesn't even need to agree. The Bengals have unilateral rights
to
do so in the contract.
Well, there you go. And he knew that and he gave them that
because it changes nothing for the player. He still gets paid the same amount.
Exactly. Well, we get these comments. This is what annoys me. And is Joe willing to take a pay cut? He doesn't need to. 1, 2, he would love to restructure. He would love for that to happen. And I didn't know about the unilateral part of it. He agreed to that. Why did he agree to that?
Because then the Bengals can do it.
Yeah, correct.
And then they did it for T and Jamar. I need to double check that it's in Joe's contract. It's definitely in T and Jamar's. I think it's in Joe's as well, but I can't remember.
He would sign up today for. I speak for Joe. All right, I represent him in this thing. He would love to restructure his deal to give the Bengals more cap space to add more talent. I promise you. And so, yeah, we will dive into that more in a future episode. All the details of it, why they would do it, how it would work, why they may not do it, why they haven't done it in the past. All of those things, because there's certainly a lot there. But you mentioned it. The snubbing, the ridiculousness that is the Pro Football Hall of Fame, that and a few other NFL honors takeaways coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. America's #1 sportsbook is perfect for the winter games. The winter games are officially here. And if you're anything like us, you're locking in for all of the events. It's been on my TV nonstop. Outside of, Super Bowl 60, which obviously you used FanDuel to bet on Super Bowl 60. Well, FanDuel's also perfect for the winter games, from medal counts to individual events, every angle you can think of about the sports you care about the most. FanDuel makes the winter games that much more fun. The drama of curling matches, the speed skating, hockey, everything that you're watching and all these different events that you're not used to. Why do you watch them every 4 years? Well, guess what? They're even more fun with FanDuel. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. Again, you got to get to FanDuel today. FanDuel, play your game.
I was just checking there to confirm the Joe Burrow restructure clause. I'm pretty sure it's there. 99% sure.
Even if it's not, Bengals, he'll agree.
He would agree to it. Yeah.
Yes. I promise.
Agreed. A non-material distinction, yes. A distinction without a difference. The Pro Football Hall of Fame has gotten to the point, James, where I'm almost reaching apathy with this. Like, it's not there because I know how much it means to the guys that are affected by it. Ken Anderson, Willie Anderson. Mm-hmm. But the process, the drama this year around the Patriots owner and former head coach, Bill Belichick, obviously should be in the Hall of Fame. It's like a microcosm of what we've been experiencing, where like this process is just why are you stepping on your own toes so often to make the right decisions here? And we've had 2 kickers go into the Hall of Fame since the last time a right tackle went into the Hall of Fame. Was it 40 years ago? Did I see that right? 30, 40 years. It's been so long since a right tackle has gone into the Hall of Fame. It's just crazy to me that people discount right tackle the way they do in this day and age, knowing what we know now. And that we continue to go through this song and dance with Ken Anderson and the process that he's now dealing with, that the NFL is looking at fixing. And that's why it's kind of reaching that point of apathy to me. It's just like, man, you guys are such a joke. It's hard to care, but honestly, because of what it means to the players, you have to continue to care.
Yeah, you have to care. And I think Ken Anderson has gotten to the point where he's like, well, if I get in, great. If not, had a great career, have a great family. Like, he's gotten to that stage of his life. Obviously, he would love to be in. I think Willie is still like, I'm in it. I'm in the mix. I'm right there. I'm right. And he was in the top 7 and was just short of that 80%. And you just have to wonder when. And you hope it's next year. I hope both of them get in next year.
Do you think it's when, not if, though?
It feels like it's getting really close to that now. Like, the fact that we know that he was in the top 7, obviously 5 got in, so he was at least 7th. What did he get? 76% of the vote? Like it's you're probably talking about 1 or 2 voters flipping or voting for him. And the longer you're on there, the better. Like, he's going to be a finalist next year. I think so. I think he gets in next year. I don't want to jinx it, but I just think it's getting so close now that he will. But if he doesn't, then it's a travesty. And it's a travesty because Willie Anderson was an awesome player when the Bengals were so irrelevant, and he was awesome as in league-wide awesome. Every player knew about him. Writers were very aware. And because the Bengals weren't as good, I think that's part of it. The right tackle spot of that era, that's part of it. And then the other element here is it's not like Willie is on a national stage everywhere. Like he's in the trenches. My man's coaching linemen, and he'll do radio stuff and talk on pod. Like he'll do that, but he's been on with us, right? Or with you and Joe.
Willie, yeah, we have Willie on.
Yeah. He's been on this pod.
Yeah.
It's been forever. But like I've talked with
him. Then he
him
started doing his own thing. Yeah.
But the point is like you don't see him like Witt. Like now he's got to go against Witt next year. Well, Willie should go in before Witt.
The list is tough next year. That's the problem is you keep getting all these guys who probably should be first ballot Hall of Famers like Gronkowski, Richard Sherman, Adrian Peterson next year.
Oh.
And I mean, Ben Roethlisberger probably will go into the Hall of Fame very early in his candidacy as well.
Yeah.
There's just new guys every year that get added, and then you get the recency bias stuff that goes on with them too. That's what makes it tough every year, I think, because you keep getting these guys that, rightly go in, and it's easy to make the case that they should when they do, but so should Willie. And the consideration just is what was too late to arrive for him in the first place, which is why we're still dealing with this years later.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bad when there's this kind of backlog. I wonder how much that Ring of Honor stuff had Willie been in the Bengals Ring of Honor in 2012 or 13, right? If that had mattered at all. Also, oddly enough, and I forgot this probably since I wrote my book, Enter the Jungle, but they cut Willie on August 30th. Like Willie was cut right before camp ended, like as one of the final cut. That's like to think about that. And then he played for the Ravens in 2008, which lucky him, the Bengals sucked in 2008. So he played one last season, went to the playoffs, all those things. But like just wild to think of like a legend like that making it to final cuts and then getting cut, not traded, not anything, just cut. Like that's just insane to me, insane in my head to think like that. How many times does that happen? Like it's not many.
No. There's also, of course, a very easy argument to make that the NFL just doesn't respect the organization in Cincinnati, doesn't respect the players that have played in Cincinnati as much as they should. There are all sorts of examples where it's easy to make this argument. Of course, you don't know what exactly the arguments are in their head when they're voting and how they're thinking about things, if it's a subconscious bias, if it's a conscious bias. But I mean, it extends to Jackson Smith and Jigba winning Offensive Player of the Year after a year that was probably a little bit worse than Jamar's 2024. And I know that there's different candidates year to year. There's different competition year to year, all these things. But Jamar couldn't get a single first place vote last year. I mean, it was a bit jarring to me at the time. A Triple Crown winner, a rare accomplishment in the NFL, putting up the season he did, which was +7 touchdowns compared to JSN this year, and like minus a little bit in receptions and yards, like a little bit less than 1% probably, or a couple percent maybe.
Yep. Couldn't
get a single vote. Man, I know Saquon existed last year. I know all that, but man.
Yeah, he should have gotten votes for sure. I mean, he was dominant. He had 17 touchdowns as a receiver. Like that's really hard to do now, and to score that many touchdowns with the attention that he commands. And that's part of it for sure. It's tough. And look, Saquon, I'm not saying he didn't deserve it. It should have been much closer. Like all the outrage about MVP, Jamar and Saquon for OPOY should have been much closer than Drake, maybe, and Matt Stafford. Yeah. Anyways.
Not enough MVP voters watched him throw that same interception he threw in the Super Bowl to Geno.
Drake, maybe. Like, come on. Anyways. All right.
My only exposures to Drake May this year, to be fair, are the Bengals in the playoffs, and I wasn't. He obviously made some plays against the Bengals, but like the way he started that game was like this is your MVP candidate, really?
He was really good this year and like really good, but it's like he got an A in algebra, and Matthew Stafford's acing AP Calc or something. You know, like it's just on a whole nother, like everything they asked Stafford to do in Los Angeles, it's just different. That's all. It's just like how Joe's asked to do much differently than what Drake May's asked to. Like it's very similar in that way, I would say.
And one of the
Stafford does a ton for them.
One of the most infuriating arguments I see about evaluating quarterbacks is people just talk about the receivers. They're like, yeah, but look at who they're throwing to. Like, come on, man. More matters to your quarterback success than only the receivers he's throwing to. People have been using it to discount Joe Burrow for years, and it just drives me crazy. That kind of thinking drives me crazy. Also, Joe couldn't get a single MVP vote last year. That's the other thing. Like the way MVP voting went this year, whether you're throwing out votes for Allen, you're throwing out a vote for Herbert, couldn't get a single vote for Joe last year.
I just, yeah, I get it. The Herbert one's wild. Joe, and that's our guy who did it, but Joe, 2024 Joe Burrow is better and more valuable than 2025 Justin Herbert. I don't think that's a take. Maybe it is, I guess. It's not a take. It shouldn't be a take. It should just be kind of
these voters just care so much about team records. That's probably why Jamar didn't get the vote. You know,
sure.
if the Bengals were 14-3 last year, Jamar's probably the offensive player of the year. Joe's probably the MVP, right? Bengals probably get those two categories, but because the defense is so bad, well, offense, you don't get those honors anymore. That's why you got to fix the defense, James.
Fix the defense.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hopefully these NFL honors get sorted out in the near future. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.